You are nothing. The words echoed in Nora's mind as she pressed herself against the cold stone wall, trying to make herself even smaller than she already felt. The grand hall of the Silver Moon Palace was ablaze with light, hundreds of candles casting dancing shadows across marble floors that gleamed like water under moonlight. Laughter and conversation filled the air, a symphony of excitement and anticipation that made her chest ache with a loneliness so profound it felt like drowning. She clutched the silver pitcher of wine tighter, her knuckles white against the polished metal, and kept her eyes fixed on the floor. That was the rule. Omegas did not look up. Omegas did not meet eyes. Omegas, especially ones like her, did not dare to dream. The ceremony was about to begin. Every unmated she-wolf of age from the four corners of the kingdom had traveled here for this night, the night when Alpha King Theron would choose his queen. The hall was a sea of silk and jewels, of carefully styled hair and practiced smiles. These women were warriors and daughters of nobility, healers with ancient gifts, and scholars who could recite pack law in 3 languages. They were everything Nora was not: beautiful, powerful, worthy. She could see them from her position in the shadows, preening and positioning themselves where the king would be sure to notice them. Lady Seraphina stood near the dais in a gown of deep crimson that clung to her curves like a second skin, her dark hair cascading down her back in perfect waves. She laughed at something another wolf said, but her eyes never stopped scanning the room, calculating and cold. Everyone knew she would be chosen. Her father was the king's most trusted advisor, and the alliance would strengthen the crown's hold on the eastern territories. It was politics. It was smart. It was inevitable. "More wine here," a sharp voice commanded, and Nora jumped, nearly dropping the pitcher. She hurried forward, keeping her head bowed as she refilled the goblet of a beta female who did not even glance in her direction. To them, she was furniture. Less than furniture. She was a ghost that served drinks in cleared plates and disappeared into the walls when her usefulness ended. 23 years she had lived in this pack, and she could count on one hand the number of times someone had spoken her name with anything other than disdain or pity. Her own mother had died when she was young, and her father had remarried within a year, eager to distance himself from the daughter who brought him only shame. A wolfless Omega, the lowest of the low, the mistake that nature should have corrected. The great doors at the end of the hall suddenly swung open, and the room fell silent so quickly that Nora could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. He was here, Alpha King Theron. Even from her position in the shadows, even with her eyes trained on the floor, she could feel the change in the air. Power rolled off him in waves that made her skin prickle and her breath catch. She had never seen him up close. Omegas were not permitted at royal functions, except to serve, and even then they were kept to the edges, the dark places where important eyes would not have to acknowledge their existence. But she had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. Theron Nightshade had taken the throne 5 years ago after his father's sudden death, and in those 5 years, he had transformed from a prince known for his wild ways and dangerous temper into a king that other alphas feared and respected in equal measure. He was ruthless in battle, brilliant in strategy, and completely unmated. Until tonight. "My people." His voice rang out across the hall, deep and commanding, and Nora felt something inside her chest twist painfully at the sound. "Tonight, we gather for a tradition as old as our kind. The choosing of a queen. My queen." There was movement, the rustle of fabric as hundreds of she-wolves stood straighter, smiled brighter, angled their bodies just so. Nora poured more wine into a goblet that did not need refilling, her hands trembling slightly. She did not know why her heart was racing. She did not know why tears were burning behind her eyes. This had nothing to do with her. This would never have anything to do with her. "I have walked among you tonight," Theron continued, and Nora could hear him moving now, his footsteps slow and deliberate on the marble floor. I have spoken with many. I have observed more, and I have made my decision. The silence that followed was absolute. Nora could feel the tension in the room like a living thing, pressing down on her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. Lady Seraphina stepped forward, her smile victorious, her hand already extending as if to receive a crown. Several other high-born females moved as well, each convinced they had won his favor. Nora set down the pitcher on a side table and turned to slip toward the servants' entrance. She should not be here for this. It felt wrong, invasive, like watching something too intimate for eyes like hers. But as she took her first step toward escape, something impossible happened. Stop. The word was not shouted, but it carried such absolute authority that every person in the room froze, including Nora. Her body obeyed before her mind could process the command, her foot halting mid-step. You, in the corner. Time seemed to slow. Nora's blood turned to ice in her veins. There were others in the corners, she told herself frantically. Other servants, other Omegas. He could not possibly mean her. The one in the gray dress, with the wine pitcher. Her gray dress. The plain, shapeless thing she wore because it was all she owned that was clean. The wine pitcher she had just set down. Oh, goddess. Oh, no. Look at me. Her body would not obey this time. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear, to wake up from this nightmare. But before she could move, before she could think, the king was there, right there, in front of her. She could see his boots first, black leather polished to a mirror shine. Then his legs, his torso, his broad shoulders. She forced her eyes up, knowing that disobedience would be worse than whatever punishment waited for her audacity. And finally, she looked into the face of Alpha King Theron. The world stopped. Everything stopped. His eyes were the color of amber lit from within, wolf eyes even in human form, and they were fixed on her, with an intensity that stole the breath from her lungs. His face was all hard angles and sharp lines, a warrior's face, with a scar that cut through his left eyebrow and disappeared into his hairline. His hair was black as midnight and fell to his shoulders, half of it pulled back in a way that somehow made him look both civilized and feral. He was terrifying. He was beautiful. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the entire hall. What is your name? His voice was softer now. Meant only for her, and it did something strange to her insides, something warm and liquid and terrifying. Nora, she whispered, hating how weak she sounded, how small. Nora Ashwood, Your Majesty. Nora, he repeated, and the way he said it, like he was tasting each letter, like her name meant something, made her knees weak. How long have you served in this palace? She swallowed hard. All my life, Your Majesty. I was born here. His eyes narrowed slightly, and she saw his jaw tighten. And in all that time, has anyone noticed you? The question was so unexpected, so precisely aimed at the deepest wound in her soul, that she felt tears threaten again. She blinked them back furiously. I am an Omega, Your Majesty. We are not meant to be noticed. Something flickered across his face then, something that looked almost like anger, but not directed at her. You are wrong, he said quietly. Then he turned, still standing close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, and addressed the hall. I have made my choice. The room seemed to hold its breath. Lady Seraphina took another step forward, her smile now fixed and brittle. Several other she-wolves did the same, each certain that this strange detour was just theater before the inevitable announcement. Theron's voice rang out clear and absolute. Nora Ashwood. She is the one. She will be my queen. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with shock so profound it had physical weight. Nora. Heard someone gasp. Heard the whisper of fabric as bodies turned toward her. Heard her own heartbeat like thunder in her ears. This was not happening. This could not be happening. Your Majesty. A male voice cut through the shock, and Nora recognized it as belonging to Lord Brennan, Lady Seraphina's father. His tone was carefully controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath it. Surely there has been some mistake. This girl is an Omega, a wolfless Omega. She has no standing, no family of consequence. No. Are you questioning my decision, Lord Brennan? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Theron's voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was death in it now. Lord Brennan paled. No, Your Majesty. Of course not. I only thought perhaps you thought wrong. Theron turned back to Nora, and his expression softened in a way that made her chest ache. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against hers, and the moment their skin touched, something jolted through her. Energy. Recognition. Something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he felt it too. Come, he said gently. Stand with me. He led her forward, and she walked because her body seemed to move of its own accord, drawn to him like metal to a magnet. Every eye in the hall was on her now, staring, judging, hating. She could feel the weight of their contempt like physical blows. But Theron's hand in hers was steady, grounding, real. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. When they reached the dais, Theron turned to face the assembled wolves, keeping Nora's hand clasped firmly in his. I know this is not what any of you expected, he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent hall. But the bond between true mates is not subject to our expectations or our politics. It simply is. I recognized this woman the moment I entered this hall. My wolf recognized her, and that is all the justification I need or will provide. True mates. The words echoed in Nora's mind like a prayer and a curse. True mates were rare, the stuff of legends and bedtime stories. Most wolves never found theirs, settling instead for chosen mates who were compatible and politically advantageous. But true mates were different. They were fated, inevitable. 2 halves of one soul, and he was claiming she was his. Lady Seraphina's voice cut through the murmur of shocked conversation that had begun. Your Majesty, with all respect, how can she be your true mate when she has no wolf? The mate bond requires 2 wolves to recognize each other. She is enough. The single word cracked like a whip, and Seraphina fell silent, though her eyes burned with rage as they fixed on Nora. My decision is final. The ceremony will proceed as planned. Nora Ashwood will be my queen. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to challenge me for the right to rule. No one moved. No one spoke. Challenging an alpha king was suicide, and everyone in the room knew it. After a long moment, Theron nodded. Good. Then this matter is settled. The coronation will take place in 3 days. Until then, Nora will be treated with the respect due to the future queen of this realm. Anyone who fails to show her that respect will answer to me personally. He turned to her. Then, and his expression was softer again, those amber eyes searching her face. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Was she all right? She was standing in front of hundreds of wolves who hated her, holding hands with a king who had just declared her his mate, and her entire world had been ripped apart and reassembled in the space of 5 minutes. I do not understand, she whispered. Why me? How can I be your mate when I have no wolf? How can you even feel the bond? His thumb stroked across her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. Your wolf is not absent, Nora. I can sense her. She is sleeping, but she is there. And as for why you are my mate, there is no why. You simply are. Fate does not explain itself." Before she could respond, he turned to the gathered crowd again. "This celebration is concluded. Return to your homes. In 3 days, you will return for a coronation." It was a dismissal, clear and absolute, and the wolves began to file out, though many cast dark looks back at Nora as they went. When the hall had finally emptied, except for a few guards stationed at the doors, Theron released her hand and took a step back, giving her space to breathe. "I know this is overwhelming," he said. "I know you have questions, but first, we need to get you somewhere safe. My choice tonight has made you enemies, powerful ones, and they will not accept this easily." Nora's mind was spinning. "Your Majesty, I do not even know if what you are saying is true. I have never felt a wolf inside me. Never had even a hint that I was anything but what everyone said I was. How can you be so certain?" He studied her for a long moment, then moved closer again, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "May I?" he asked, lifting his hand toward her face. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and he placed his palm gently against her cheek. The warmth of his touch spread through her like liquid sunlight, and she felt something deep inside her chest shift, like something waking from a very long sleep. "Feel that?" he murmured. "That is your wolf stirring. She recognizes me, even if you do not yet understand what that means." Nora closed her eyes, focusing on the sensation. There it was. A presence she had never felt before, small and distant, but undeniably real. A spark of something wild and powerful that had been dormant so long she had never known to look for it. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop. "Them. I feel her," she breathed. "Oh, goddess, I feel her." Theron's other hand came up to cup her face, his thumbs gently brushing away her tears. "She has been waiting for the right moment. Waiting for me." The tenderness in his voice undid something inside her, and she found herself leaning into his touch, seeking more of that impossible warmth. But reality crashed back in like a cold wave. "They will never accept me," she said, opening her eyes to look at him. "Your people, your court, saw what I am, what I was, a servant, an omega. How can I possibly be a queen?" "You will learn," he said simply, "and I will be with you every step of the way. But first, we need to keep you alive long enough to get there." The bluntness of the statement shocked her. "You think someone will try to kill me?" His expression darkened. "I think Lord Brennan has spent years positioning his daughter to be queen. I think there are others who had similar plans with their own daughters or sisters. I think power is a dangerous game, and you have just been thrust into the center of it." Fear coiled in her stomach, cold and sharp. "Then why choose me? If it puts me in so much danger, if it causes so many problems, why not just choose someone else? Someone they expect. Someone who is prepared for this." The look he gave her was so intense it stole her breath. "Because you are mine," he said, and there was a possessiveness in his voice that should have frightened her, but instead sent heat, pooling low in her belly. "Because from the moment I saw you, standing in that corner trying to be invisible, my wolf claimed you. Because when I touched your hand, I felt something I have never felt before. Because fate does not give us choices, Nora. It gives us truth. And the truth is that you are my mate, my queen. And I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone harm you." The fierce protectiveness in his words, the absolute conviction, made something inside her chest swell. No one had ever protected her before. No one had ever claimed her. No one had ever looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth fighting for. "I do not know how to be a queen," she said, her voice small but steady. "Then I will teach you," he replied. "But right now, I need to get you to the royal wing. You will have your own chambers, guards at your door, everything you need." He turned toward the door, but she caught his sleeve, stopping him. "Wait. Your Majesty—" "Theron," he corrected, gently. "When we are alone, you call me Theron." The intimacy of using his name felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff into unknown air. "Theron," she tried, and his eyes flared with heat at the sound. "I need to know. Is this real? The mate bond, the connection you feel. Is it real? Or is this some political maneuver I do not understand?" He turned back to her fully, taking both her hands in his. "It is real, Nora. More real than anything I have ever known. And I swear to you on my crown and my life, I will prove it to you. Every day for the rest of our lives, I will prove that you are exactly where you are meant to be." She wanted to believe him. Goddess help her. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But 23 years of being invisible, of being told she was worthless, did not disappear in a single night, no matter how magical. "They will make my life hell," she said quietly. "The other wolves, the nobles, they will never let me forget what I was. Let them try," he said, and there was a dangerous edge to his smile. "You are under my protection now, and I promise you, anyone who dares to disrespect you will learn very quickly why I am called the most dangerous alpha in the realm." A knock at the door interrupted them, and Theron called out permission to enter. An older woman entered, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her dark eyes sharp and assessing as they landed on Nora. She wore the formal robes of a high-ranking pack elder, and the disapproval on her face was evident. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing to Theron but barely glancing at Nora. "I am Margot, the head of the royal household. I have been informed that I am to prepare chambers for your intended." The disdain in the word intended was barely concealed. Theron's eyes narrowed. "You will address her as Your Highness or future Queen Nora. Nothing less." Margot's lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course, Your Majesty." "Your Highness," she added, turning to Nora with a look that suggested she had tasted something sour. "If you would follow me, I will show you to your chambers." Theron squeezed Nora's hands once more before releasing them. "I have matters to attend to tonight, security arrangements, announcements to send to the other territories. But I will come to you in the morning, and we will begin planning the coronation. Will you be all right?" She nodded, even though she felt like she might shatter into 1,000 pieces at any moment. "I will manage." He leaned in, and for a heart-stopping moment she thought he might kiss her. But instead he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than any kiss could have been. "You are stronger than you know," he murmured against her skin. "Sleep well, my queen." Then he was gone, striding from the hall with a confidence that seemed to make the very air move around him. Nora was left standing with Margot, whose expression had gone from disapproving to openly hostile the moment the king was out of sight. "This way," the older woman said curtly, turning on her heel and walking toward a different exit than the one Nora usually used. The servant entrance. No, she realized. That was not her entrance anymore. She followed Margot through corridors she had only ever seen while carrying trays or pushing cleaning carts, her heart pounding with every step. They passed other servants who stopped and stared, their shock evident. Word would spread quickly. By morning, everyone in the palace would know that the wolfless Omega had somehow become the future queen. The thought made her nauseous. They climbed a grand staircase, the marble steps covered in plush carpet that her feet had never touched before, and moved deeper into the royal wing. Finally, Margot stopped in front of a set of ornate double doors. "These will be your chambers until the coronation," she said, pushing the doors open. "After which, you will move to the queen's apartments." Nora stepped inside and felt her breath catch. The room was bigger than any 10 servants' quarters combined. A massive bed dominated one wall, draped in silk and velvet in deep blues and silver. A sitting area with plush chairs and a fireplace occupied another corner. Tall windows looked out over the palace grounds, the moon hanging heavy and full in the night sky. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was not her. "Your belongings will be brought up," Margot said, though Nora had no belongings to speak of, beyond a few threadbare dresses and some books she had managed to save from her mother. "A lady's maid will be assigned to you in the morning. Guards will be posted at your door." She turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. "A word of advice, girl. Do not get too comfortable here. Kings change their minds, especially about Omegas who have no business sitting on thrones." Before Nora could respond, the door closed with a soft click, leaving her alone in a room that felt like a beautiful cage. She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass, and looked out at the moon. Her wolf. Theron had said she had a wolf. She closed her eyes and searched inside herself, looking for that presence she had felt when he touched her. There. Faint, but there. A warm, wild thing stirring in the depths of her soul. "Who are you?" she whispered. The answer came not in words, but in feeling. A sense of rightness, of purpose, of power waiting to unfold. Nora opened her eyes, her reflection, staring back at her from the dark glass. She looked the same as she always had. Small, plain, unremarkable. But something in her eyes had changed. There was a spark there now, a hint of the fire that Theron had seen. "They will try to break you," she told her reflection. "They will try to make you believe you do not deserve this. But he chose you. And maybe, just maybe, there is a reason for that." She turned from the window and walked to the bed, running her hand over the silk coverlet. Tomorrow, everything would begin. The preparation for the coronation, the lessons in how to be a queen, the enemies circling like wolves around wounded prey. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Nora Ashwood allowed herself to hope, to believe that maybe, impossibly, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Sleep came fitfully, her dreams a tangle of amber eyes and warm touches, and a voice that promised her the world. When dawnlight finally crept through the windows, she woke to a knock at the door. "Enter," she called, her voice rough with sleep. A young woman entered, probably close to Nora's own age, with bright red hair and friendly green eyes. She wore the uniform of a palace lady's maid, and her smile was the first genuine one Nora had seen since the ceremony. "Good morning, Your Highness," she said with a curtsy that seemed more playful than formal. "I am Celeste. I have been assigned as your lady's maid. And before you ask, yes, I volunteered for the position." Nora sat up, pulling the covers around herself. "You volunteered? Why?" Celeste's smile turned mischievous. "Because I have been working in this palace for 3 years, and I have seen you around. You were always kind, even to people like me. You never treated the lower servants like dirt the way some of the higher ones do. And I figure if the king sees something special in you, there must be something to see." The simple kindness in her words made Nora's throat tight. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know." Celeste moved to the wardrobe and began pulling out gowns that had apparently been brought in during the night. "We need to get you dressed. The king will be here within the hour for breakfast. And trust me, you want to look the part. The vultures are already circling, and first impressions with the court matter." Nora climbed out of the bed and moved to where Celeste was laying out options. Each gown was more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined. Wearing rich fabrics, intricate embroidery, colors that would make her actually visible instead of helping her hide. "I do not know how to be what they expect," she admitted quietly. Celeste turned to her, expression serious now. "Then do not be what they expect. Be what you are. The king did not choose you because you are like them. He chose you because you are different." Over the next hour, Celeste helped her bathe and dress, choosing a gown of deep forest green that brought out the hidden gold flecks in Nora's brown eyes. She arranged Nora's long brown hair, which had always been pulled back in a simple braid, into an elegant style that framed her face. When Nora looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who mattered, someone who deserved to be seen. The knock that came was firm and strong, and Nora knew before the door opened that it was him. Theron entered, and the look on his face when he saw her made heat flood her cheeks. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his eyes never leaving hers. Celeste curtsied and slipped from the room, leaving them alone. Theron closed the distance between them, moving with that predatory grace that marked him as an apex predator. "Did you sleep well?" She had not, but she nodded anyway. "Well enough, considering." He smiled, a small curve of his lips that transformed his harsh face into something almost boyish. "Liar. I did not sleep at all. I kept thinking about you here, alone, wondering if you were afraid." The admission surprised her. "Were you worried I would run?" "No," he said. "I was worried you would convince yourself this is a mistake, that you do not deserve to be here, that I made the wrong choice." He reached out and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "But I did not make a mistake, Nora, and I need you to start believing that." "I am trying," she said honestly. "It is just hard to undo a lifetime of being told you are worthless in a single night." His expression darkened with anger, but not at her. "Who told you that? Who made you feel worthless?" She looked away, but he gently turned her face back to his. "My father, his new wife, the other Omegas who at least had wolves, the Betas who saw me as less than nothing. Everyone, really. It is just how things are when you are at the bottom." "Not anymore," he said fiercely. "You are at the top now, and anyone who tries to push you back down will have to go through me first." The protectiveness in his voice did something to her, made that sleeping wolf inside stir with approval. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when no one else did." "I will always see you," he promised. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Now, we need to discuss the coronation. There is much to plan, and I want your input on all of it." They sat together at a small table that had been set with breakfast, and as they ate, Theron explained the ceremony that would make her his queen. "What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below." The coronation would be a multi-day affair, he explained. First would come the formal presentation to the court, where she would be introduced as his chosen mate. Then the claiming ceremony, where he would mark her publicly, binding them together in a way that could not be undone. Finally, the actual coronation, where the crown would be placed on her head, and she would swear the oaths that would make her queen. "The marking," Nora said, carefully, her heart racing. "How does that work?" Theron's eyes darkened with heat. "I will bite you here." He reached out and traced a spot where her neck met her shoulder. "And my venom will enter your bloodstream, binding us together. It will hurt at first, but then it will feel like fire and ice and pleasure all mixed together. And when it is done, you will carry my mark, and every wolf in the realm will know you are mine." The possessiveness in his tone made her shiver. "And this has to be done publicly." "It is tradition," he said. "A way of proving the bond is real and consensual. But if you are not ready, we can delay." "No," she interrupted. "If we delay, it will give your enemies more time to plot, more time to convince others that I am not worthy. We do this as planned." Pride flashed across his face. "You are already thinking like a queen." Before she could respond, there was a sharp knock, and the door opened without waiting for permission. Lord Brennan entered, his daughter Seraphina at his side, both wearing expressions of barely concealed fury. "Your Majesty," Brennan said with a bow that was more insult than respect, "forgive the intrusion, but there are matters we must discuss. Matters of state that cannot wait." Theron stood, positioning himself slightly in front of Nora in a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed. "What matters?" "The council is concerned," Brennan said smoothly. "About your choice of mate. We understand the pull of desire, of course, but this girl has no training, no education in statecraft, no understanding of the complexities of ruling. Surely you can see the wisdom in taking a more suitable queen, one who can actually help you govern, while keeping your little Omega as a—" "Finish that sentence and lose your tongue," Theron snarled, his eyes flashing gold with his wolf's fury. "Nora is my mate and will be my queen. Anyone who suggests otherwise is guilty of treason." Brennan paled but pressed on. "Your Majesty, be reasonable. The girl cannot even shift. How can she lead pack ceremonies? How can she bless newborns or lead hunts? These are the duties of a queen, and she cannot fulfill them. My wolf is there," Nora heard herself say, surprising everyone, including herself. She stood, moving to stand beside Theron rather than behind him. "It is dormant, but it is there, and when the time is right, she will wake." Serafina laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound. "Dormant. How convenient. How impossible to prove or disprove. Tell me, little Omega, has your supposed wolf ever spoken to you? Ever given you any indication she exists beyond the king's rather desperate claims?" Nora met the other woman's eyes steadily. "Yes. Last night, when he touched me, I felt her wake. I felt her recognize him. It was not quite a lie. She had felt something. And with each hour that passed, that something grew stronger." "You felt what you wanted to feel," Serafina said dismissively. "This is ridiculous. Father, surely the council can override this farce?" "The council has no authority to override the king's choice of mate," Theron said coldly. "And even if they did, I would dissolve the council before I let them make that decision. Nora is my queen. Accept it or challenge me for the throne. Those are your only options." The silence that followed was toxic. Finally, Brennan bowed stiffly. "As you say, Your Majesty, we will of course accept your decision. But do not expect the court to welcome her with open arms. She will have to earn her place, and that will not be easy." "She will not have to earn anything," Theron countered. "She is my mate. That is all the qualification she needs." After they left, Nora sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. "That was just the beginning," she said. "They will keep pushing until they find a way to break us." Theron knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "They can push all they want. They will fail. Because you are stronger than they know. Stronger than, you know." She wanted to believe him, but the fear was a living thing inside her chest, whispering that she was not enough, would never be enough. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparations. Celeste became not just her maid, but her ally, helping her navigate the treacherous waters of palace politics. She taught Nora how to walk like a queen, how to hold her head high even when eyes full of hatred followed her every move. She explained the hierarchy of the court, who could be trusted and who could not, which families were loyal to the king, and which were looking for any excuse to rebel. Theron spent every possible moment with her, teaching her about pack law and history, about the different territories and their leaders, about the delicate balance of power that kept the realm stable. But more than that, he talked to her, really talked to her. He asked about her childhood, her mother, her dreams. He told her about his own past, about the pressure of being raised as the heir, about the loneliness that came with power. With each conversation, the bond between them grew stronger. She found herself looking for him in every room, her heart leaping when she heard his voice. And the way he looked at her, like she was precious and powerful and perfect, made her start to believe she might actually deserve this. On the morning of the ceremony, Nora woke before dawn, nerves churning in her stomach. Today, Today she would be presented to the court as the future queen. Today, Theron would mark her in front of hundreds of witnesses. Today everything would change, irrevocably and completely. Celeste helped her dress in a gown of pure white, symbolic of new beginnings. It was beautiful and terrifying, and Nora could barely breathe in it. "You look like a queen," Celeste said, her eyes shining. "You look exactly like what you are meant to be." "I look like a girl playing dress-up," Nora countered, staring at her reflection. The woman in the mirror was elegant and poised, but she still felt like the invisible Omega cowering in the corner. "Then fake it until you are not faking anymore," Celeste advised. "Half of being royalty is just acting like you deserve to be there. Eventually you will believe it." The ceremony was held in the grand throne room, every important family in the realm in attendance. As Nora walked down the long aisle toward where Theron waited, she could feel every eye on her, most of them hostile. Whispers followed her like a shadow. Worthless. Omega. Pretender. But Theron was there at the end of the aisle, magnificent in formal robes of black and silver. His eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade away. When she reached him, he took her hand and turned to face the assembled court. "Today," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I present to you Nora Ashwood, my chosen mate and your future queen." The words echoed in the silence. No one cheered, no one applauded. The lack of support was its own kind of violence. Theron's hand tightened on hers. "Some of you question my choice. Some of you believe I have made a mistake. But I stand before you now and tell you that this woman is my fated mate. My wolf recognizes her. My soul recognizes her. And that is all that matters." He turned to her then, his eyes searching her face. "Are you ready?" She was not. She would never be ready, but she nodded anyway. "Yes. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed, with notifications on." Theron's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "This will hurt," he murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But I promise you, it will be worth it. Trust me." "I trust you," she whispered, and realized with a shock that it was true. She did trust him. This man who had seen her when no one else had. This king who had chosen her against all reason and logic. He leaned in, his breath warm against her neck, and she felt his lips brush that spot where her shoulder met her throat. For a moment, there was only that gentle kiss, and then his fangs descended and he bit down. The pain was immediate and blinding, white-hot agony that made her gasp and her knees buckle. But Theron's arms were around her, holding her steady, holding her safe. And then something else began to happen. Heat. Incredible, searing heat that spread from the bite mark through her veins like liquid fire. It burned away the pain, burned away everything, except awareness of him, his scent surrounding her, his heart beating against her chest, his wolf calling to something deep inside her. And that something answered. Nora felt it the moment her wolf woke. Really woke. Not the faint stirring she had felt before, but a full roar of consciousness and power. Her back arched, her body convulsing with the force of the awakening, and she felt her eyes flash gold, felt claws extend from her fingertips, felt the beast inside her stretching after years of imposed sleep. The throne room erupted in shocked gasps and whispers, because every wolf there could sense it, could feel the power rolling off her in waves. Theron pulled back, his eyes wide with something like awe. "Nora," he breathed, "your eyes." She looked at him through vision that was suddenly sharper, colors brighter, every detail in crystal focus. "She is awake," she said, and her voice had a dual quality now, layered with the voice of her wolf. "She has been asleep so long. Why has she been asleep so long?" "I do not know," Theron said. his hand coming up to trace the mark he had left on her neck. She could feel the imprint burning, branding her as his. But we will find out. I promise you. The gathered wolves were no longer silent. The whispers had grown to full conversation, speculation and shock rippling through the crowd. Someone called out, "Impossible. Omegas cannot have wolves like that. That power. It is not Omega power." An elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd, her white hair gleaming in the light, her robes marking her as one of the pack seers. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice shaking. "May I approach the girl?" Theron nodded, still holding Nora steady. The seer came close, her ancient eyes studying Nora with an intensity that felt like being dissected. She reached out a gnarled hand and touched the mark on Nora's neck, then gasped and pulled back as if burned. "Impossible," she whispered. "It cannot be. The line was destroyed. Every last one of them was killed in the purge." "What line?" Theron demanded. "What are you talking about?" The seer's eyes met his, filled with shock and something like fear. "Your Majesty, this girl does not carry Omega blood. Or rather, she does, but it is buried beneath something far more powerful. She is a guardian, a lunar guardian, the last of a bloodline that was supposed to be extinct." The throne room exploded with noise, shouts of disbelief, of denial, of fear. Nora swayed on her feet, overwhelmed by the sudden attention, by the power still coursing through her veins, by revelations she did not understand. Theron pulled her against his chest, his arms protective around her. "Quiet," he roared, and the room fell silent instantly. He turned to the seer. "Explain. What are lunar guardians?" The old woman took a shaky breath. "They were the most powerful wolf line in existence, Your Majesty. Born under the blessing of the moon goddess herself. They could not be killed in wolf form, could heal from any wound, could command other wolves with just their voice. They were the protectors of the realm, the enforcers of the goddess's will. But 300 years ago, they were betrayed. The other packs feared their power, feared that they would seize control of everything. So they conspired together and slaughtered them. Every man, woman, and child. Or so we thought. Someone survived," Theron said slowly, his eyes moving to Nora. "And the bloodline continued. Hidden, diluted over generations until it was almost unrecognizable. Until now. Until she was marked by her true mate," the seer agreed. "The bond has awakened what was sleeping, has brought her power to the surface." Nora's mind was reeling. "My mother," she whispered. "My mother used to tell me stories about the moon and wolves who could not die. I thought they were just fairy tales. They were history," the seer said. "Your history. And now that your wolf has awakened, there are those who will fear you. Those who will want to destroy you before you can become too powerful. Let them try," Theron growled, pulling Nora even closer. "She is under my protection. She is my mate and my queen, and anyone who threatens her threatens the throne itself." Lord Brennan pushed through the crowd, his face red with rage. "This changes everything," he spat. "A guardian on the throne? The packs will never stand for it. They will rebel. Then they will be crushed," Theron said coldly. "I am done with this debate. The ceremony continues." He turned to the priest who was standing near the throne, looking shell-shocked. "Finish it." The priest stumbled forward, producing the ceremonial crown, a delicate circlet of silver and moonstones. His hands shook as he held it above Nora's head. "Do you, Nora Ashwood, swear to uphold the laws of this realm, to protect its people, to serve with wisdom and compassion as queen and mate to the Alpha King?" Nora's voice came out stronger than she expected, amplified by the power of her newly awakened wolf. "I swear it. Then by the power vested in me by the moon goddess, and the ancient laws of our people. I crown you Queen Nora, mate to the Alpha King, guardian of the realm." The crown settled onto her head, and Nora felt something click into place, like a key turning in a lock. The power that had been wild and chaotic suddenly focused, centered, became something she could almost control. She looked out at the assembled wolves and saw their shock, their fear, their hatred. But she also saw a few faces that held hope, that looked at her like she might be exactly what the realm needed. Theron took her hand and raised it high. "Behold your queen," he said, his voice ringing with pride and challenge. "Anyone who wishes to dispute her right to rule may do so now." Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, slowly, wolves began to kneel. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough that it felt like maybe, just maybe, when the ceremony was finally over, when the last of the reluctant congratulations had been given, and the court had dispersed to gossip and plot, Theron led Nora back to what were now her official chambers as queen. The moment the door closed behind them, he pulled her into his arms. "You were magnificent," he said, his lips brushing her temple. "Absolutely magnificent." Nora sagged against him, suddenly exhausted. "I do not understand any of this. How can I be a guardian when I have lived my entire life as the weakest member of the pack?" "Because your power was bound somehow," he said, "suppressed, maybe by your mother to protect you, or maybe by the trauma of losing her. I do not know. But what I do know is that you are exactly what you are meant to be." She pulled back to look at him. This man who had changed her entire world in the space of 3 days. "Why are you not afraid of me?" The seer said guardians were powerful enough to command other wolves. Powerful enough to challenge kings. His smile was fierce and proud. "Because you are mine, and I am yours. And together, we are unstoppable." He leaned down and kissed her then. Really kissed her for the first time. And Nora felt the mate bond snap into full consciousness between them. It was like a golden thread connecting their souls, thrumming with energy and emotion and absolute rightness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. "I have been waiting for you. My entire life," he said quietly. "Every cold political marriage I was pressured into and refused. Every she-wolf who threw herself at me for power. I was waiting for this. For you. I was invisible," Nora whispered. "How did you even see me?" "Because you were the only real thing in a room full of pretenders," he said. "Because my wolf recognized yours even when she was sleeping. Because fate does not make mistakes, Nora. It brought you to me, and I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I am afraid," she admitted, "of what I have become, of what it means, of the enemies it will make. Then we will face those fears together," he promised. "One day at a time, one challenge at a time. You do not have to do this alone anymore." That night, as Nora lay in the massive bed that was now hers, Theron beside her, his arms wrapped protectively around her, she felt her wolf settle contentedly in her chest. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. She was seen. She was claimed. She was powerful. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The girl who had spent her life in corners, trying to disappear, had become the queen who would reshape the realm. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? And in the months that followed, as Nora learned to control her newfound power, as she navigated the treacherous politics of the court with Theron at her side, as she discovered more about her guardian heritage and what it meant for the future of the realm, she never forgot that moment in the Grand Hall. The moment when a king looked past hundreds of beautiful, powerful she-wolves and saw her, the Omega in the corner who was always meant to be a queen. Their story was just beginning, but it was already legendary. The Alpha King and his guardian queen, two souls bound by fate, powerful enough to face anything as long as they faced it together. And they would face much in the years to come. Enemies would rise, ancient threats would emerge, the very stability of the realm would be tested, but they would stand together, unbreakable, unstoppable. Proof that sometimes the most powerful love stories begin with a single moment of recognition, of seeing someone for who they truly are, even when the whole world has told them they are nothing. Nora Ashwood, once invisible, once forgotten, once nothing, had become everything, and she would never be overlooked again.